it requires self-efficacy. Now let's break this down, because self-efficacy is comprised of confidence. And I think what happens is that we start to use the data points of the past, and the data points of the past begin to impact our confidence. And so what happens is we stop taking shots. We stop taking shots. But you want to know what I know about every big shot in my circle? The folks you can call big shots. The folks who, so-called got the guap, got the money. The thing that's different about the big shots and the folks who not big shots, the only thing that I see as difference, the difference is the big shot is just someone who took more small shots and they didn't give up. They just kept shooting and 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 shooting. And eventually those shots started to add up. And some of us will take a shot. We're like, oh, I can't believe I missed. And it takes a year to take another shot. And then I can't believe I missed. And it takes another 2 years to make another shot. And God forbid I try something new and I can't get it. I don't understand it. It feels like it's moving too fast. Oh, I just got to quit. What if failure wasn't an option for you? What if you didn't allow it to be an option? What if you began to fully squeeze the opportunity that came to you in the form of possibility? Possibility. The Slayer Goals membership, this is not a sales pitch, but it's something I noticed. Right? $37 a month. It's a possibility. So many people won't even squeeze that. It's a possibility. It's like, oh, well, that won't work for me. Oh, the meeting times won't work for me. It's like, oh, I have to watch the recordings. Oh. And it's like, what about the possibility? There are possibility in books. There are possibility in videos. Like there's possibilities everywhere. Are you willing to squeeze the possibilities?
If you want to be about it, come on, let's talk about it. Change up the things you see. Open your mind to possibilities. Find your power, passion, and your purpose. It's time for you to walk in greatness. Let's murder mediocrity. Slay your goals, live out your dreams. Right now. Inspirational perspective. Open your mind to a better life. It's time to live your dream. Find your purpose now. Inspirational perspective. Let's slay your goals.
Today, I want to talk possibility, but before I do, I want to share a few things that I learned while I was away. And when I say learned, I noticed. I think noticed is another way to put it. And I was sharing with Ade before we got started this morning. So I guess my mind works different. I be having questions, and I be needing answers to those questions. And so, phenomenal experience away. My wife wanted to go to Italy for her 40th. And so I was down. I was like, all right, let's go. And here's why. And this has something to do with what I want to talk about today in terms of how possibility changed my life. Because at the age, I was 24 years old, the first time I went to Europe. And what's interesting is I haven't spent much time in Europe since I've been going to Africa. And so this is since 2018. So for the last, 6, 7 or so years, I haven't really spent much time in Europe. Outside of if I had to go for business, in and out, that type of thing. I think the last time I spent time in Europe, I was in Austria. And the Czech Republic. And I did some bumping around, or looking around, but for the most part, I was there working, and it's kind of like get the work done, and then I left there and went straight to Africa. So I haven't really spent much time in Europe. So this is the first time where I spent, I would say, a considerable amount of time in Europe. And anybody that knows me knows that, like, if I have a choice, I would spend that time somewhere in Africa, right? For a whole lot of reasons that I'm not going to get into right now. But, we went to Italy. My wife wanted to go to Italy. I thought it was a good choice, partly because I wanted her to see some of the history there, because that history is part of what gave me this notion of possibility. Being there, and by the way, growing up in the West, I got a Western education. And so imagine at the age of 24, I wasn't that aware of Africa, of Africa's history, of my connection to ancient Kemet, which is now called Egypt, and the fact that, people that look like me did all these things. I didn't know that at the time. So at 24 years old, when I went to Italy, it was like, wow. And I thought that was my history because that's what I was taught. This is history, right? Now, the good thing about that is it put in me like the seed of possibility, because if these men could create works that still exist to this day, then what can I do? And that's the seed of possibility that it put in me. And so it's one of the reasons I think travel is so powerful and so necessary in terms of our overall evolution as human beings. However, this time when I went, I saw it a little differently. Like the lens had changed. Like the filter's different. And when I was at the Vatican, I couldn't help but think about all the countries that had to be exploited, in particular the African countries that had to be exploited, all the gold-laced ceilings and molding. Like when I saw it the first time, it was like, wow, how rich are they? Then when I saw it this time, I was like, wow, they stole a lot of stuff. Right? It was a completely different experience for me. So then it got me asking questions about, like, well, if Europe is overall in financial trouble, outside with the exception of a few countries, Germany, Sweden, there's some countries that have their finances in order. But in particular, like Italy doesn't. But you don't see it. Right? You walk the streets and everything's in order. We had the opportunity to go to Sardinia, which is an island off the west coast of Italy, big island. And I expected the infrastructure to kind of drop on the island, right? No, it didn't. I mean, they had beautiful tunnels and roads. The infrastructure was on point. And you might say, well, Linnell, why do you care about infrastructure? Well, because I travel through Africa the way I travel through Africa, I'm always aware of the lack of infrastructure in Africa. And the investment that African leaders, I've had conversations with African leaders, the investment that African leaders are looking to make in Africa and the lack of funds they have access to. So I started asking myself some questions like, what's Italy's GDP? And I don't even think I meant to get into this quickly, but, we're here now, right? So, like, because the other thing I want to talk about is also the experience I had with the food before we get into possibility. And I initially was going to go there first, but let's talk about the current economic conditions. So I'm like, what's Italy's GDP? So I looked that up, and, I'm like, okay. They don't really have any major exports. I mean, olive oil, but I mean, like, take a country like Rwanda that exports coffee, exports a few other things. It's like typically if you have one or two things that you're exporting, it impacts GDP. So those countries have to figure out, like, how can we be economically viable? So now I was like, all right, they don't really have major exports that would make them wealthy. So then why are they moving like they wealthy? Like, and when I say why are they moving like they're wealthy, I'm talking about, infrastructure wise, how what makes them different from a Ghana in particular, right? This is the question I have. And partly because like even like airports, everything. I mean, Ghana just like since I've been going back and forth, got the updated airport. So I'm like, what are they doing differently? So now I decided, well, what is Italy's debt? Like, what is their debt? Because here's the other thing, and we know this as black folk, so-called black folk, that sometimes people be living above their means. Right? Like sometimes the reason it looks like they got money is because they don't have money. They just got a lot of debt. Right? And so that's what right away went to my mind. Like, is Italy moving like black folk? But not all, right? But some, right? The ones that floss. Well, turns out they are. Because Italy's public debt is approximately about 140% of their GDP. 140% of their GDP, which means that they're spending way more money than they bring in. Like this, so anybody listening, they're spending way more money than they bring in. And they've been doing this. In fact, they have pulled so much debt that it's going to take, the young people of that country a long time to pay it back, if they ever. So then it's like, well, how did they get such a good credit rating? Like how can they continue? Because let's be clear, right? If I don't pay my bills, if I don't pay my debt, nobody else giving me money. So how is it that they continue to get money? Like, what kind of system are we on here? Like, these are the kind of questions that I'm asking myself. Well, so then I went and looked up Ghana's GDP to debt ratio, because anybody who's been to Ghana with me knows it's a phenomenal place. But there are some things in infrastructure, roads and things like that can be better. You don't have, like when we were in Sardinia, they had these tunnels carved in the mountains. Just go straight through. It's nice. In Ghana, we got to go up and around and back down. You get where I'm going? Right? No love lost, just different. Just different. So I was like, okay, what is Ghana's debt ratio to GDP, like GDP to debt ratio? Well, when I did the research, come to find out, they're about 64 to 68%. Well, that's pretty good. You got room. That means that the money that you're generating as a country, that you're not in over your head when it comes to debt. So why can't they get more loans? Interesting. It couldn't be the color of their skin, could it? Anyway, so these are the kind of things that that go through my mind. Everybody should go to Italy. I'm not, no shade, no hate. But I also want us to be very clear on the system that we live in. That is not just in the United States of America. This is a global system. This is a global system that in many ways gives a bit more to certain groups, while other groups have to beg, borrow, and steal in order to get what it is that they need to keep up. So today I want to talk about how possibility changed my life. And I initially was going to talk relationship, but I felt like talking about relationship and I wanted to talk relationship because over the last couple of weeks before I left, I had Arnold Sandrich in the studio and we talked about how men are silently struggling. And my team, they put a series of videos out about relationship. And one of those videos talked about why men over 40 who are single struggle. And I got some emails, I got some comments about that, mostly from men. I spent some time yesterday answering everyone. And I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't just jump right into a relationship. Maybe we should talk about possibility. And I want to talk about how possibility changed my life. Because if you don't know me well, then I think a lot of times people will assume that I had certain benefits or certain advantages over and beyond other people. Now, let me be clear. One of the advantages I did get was the education I got. Like, my parents made sure I got a really good education. I think that's paramount. I mean, even now, for my children, we will make the investment in ensuring they get an above board, above average, a stellar education. Because when I look at my life and I look at, my wife and her parents made the same move, it's like it made a difference for us, right? It made a real difference for us. So if there was one unique advantage, I would say it was my education. And then the other unique advantage, I would say, is that I went to a mostly white school for high school. And not only was it a great education, but I learned a lot about them. And because we operate in a system with them, that knowledge is irreplaceable. The ability to know when I was being played, when not, like I learned all that in high school. So by the time I got to college / corporate America, a lot of the little tricks, it's like, yeah, I've seen this before. I knew who I could trust, who I couldn't. It was. And I would say that might be another, if I'm being straight about it, just slight advantage that it gave me in this world that's dominated by so-called white people. Now, all that being said, it didn't help me in college. I got kicked out of college. And then by the time I was in my early 20s, I was struggling. So that so-called advantage wasn't necessarily playing out at the time. And I share that because what changed my life was this notion of possibility. The first notion of possibility that I was introduced to was this notion that I had a purpose. That because I was alive, I had a purpose, and that there was a guaranteed, I really want you to hear this part, that I was guaranteed the ability to fulfill that purpose if I was willing to do the work. And that's a big if. If I am willing to do the work, I am given a guarantee by the Creator that I can fulfill a purpose. That was a very, 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 very big possibility that shifted my life. The other possibility that shifted my life was travel. Because when I got outside the United States and I began to see the world, it opened my thinking to other possibilities and the idea that I could create something, or I might be able to be a part of something that could stand or exist longer than my own life. And part of that happened in Italy. Like, going through those museums and hearing them call out names. As a matter of fact, in the Vatican Museum, there's a picture of the King of Poland. And he's like the savior of Rome, right? He's a king, so he's going to be remembered in some capacity. But they remember him in Rome because he saved them from the Ottomans. And the Ottomans were different, right? And all the warring that they had learned to do in Europe, they couldn't really stand up to those guys. Their war technology was just different. And so the King of Poland had to come down with numbers to stop Rome from being attacked. And they only did it really for religious reasons back then. And so he has a big old fresco. He's remembered. He did something where he's remembered. But most of us aren't born as kings and queens, etc. And many of the people that you learn about, and, when you take these historical tours, are just merchants or traders who identified a possibility, or artists like Bocelli, who by just knowing the right person, right, by being friends with a Medici, was inked into history. So you have these other possibilities. And that's what I want to talk about today. Because I'm afraid that many of us aren't aware of the possibilities that exist right at our grasp and right at our fingertips that can completely transform and change our lives. And I believe that one of the reasons we're not aware of this is because of the way that we think about our lives, and the way that we think about ourselves, and the way that we think about possibility. Now, let me give you an example of what I mean. I can remember some time ago, a brother reached out to me for coaching. And whenever someone reaches out to me for coaching, one of the conversations that we have, especially if they're really struggling with the concept of coaching, and he was kind of like, so, what would we do? And I was just sharing with him the coaching structure, awareness, access to new choices, you identify why you want to change something, et cetera. And so I'm walking him through this. And one of the questions I had was, what are your dreams? He's like, well, man, I don't dream. I don't have no dreams. I learned a long time ago that dreaming is a luxury. And I was like, okay, not the first time I heard that from a brother. And we start to get into why. Like, okay, well, why is it that you stop dreaming? And really the reason why for him was that every time he went to go achieve something, like there was something systemic that felt like it was pulling him back. So he gave up. He gave up. So then when a man is jaded like that, for you to introduce dreaming back to him, it's like, nah, because dreaming hurts. Like, dreaming hurts. And by the way, when I've done things outside of my comfort zone, when I've actually extended myself in terms of the relationships I was building, extended myself romantically, extended myself financially, extended myself even in the work that I'm doing, it never works out. And so what happens is we begin to believe that it never works out based on data, right? There is data that it hasn't worked out, but that data is from the past. And I'm afraid that many times we allow what happened to us in the past to begin to paint what will happen to us in the future. Because since my dreams didn't work, then it's not worth dreaming. And then if I'm not dreaming, if I'm not aspiring to anything, that means that I've basically relegated myself to a jail of mediocrity in the present. Like, that's what's happened. So I've allowed, in many ways, the system to win. It is created to stop you from dreaming. It is created to make you believe that you don't have worth. It is created to rob you of your self-love. So then what this means is if I'm not willing to take the risk on possibility that I've given up, but I'm still alive. My heart is still pumping. I still have the faculties of my mind, but I have locked myself in a mental prison where possibility does not exist. And what I'm afraid of is that many of us have done exactly that. Even some of you right now who believe you haven't. Now, let me talk to you. Like those who might be shaking their heads like, you tell them, Linnell. But you're not taking any radical action in your life either. There's two ways of being locked in the prison of mediocrity and lack of possibility. There's two ways that people sit in that prison. There's a story about an admiral that was shot down. I'm gonna use this as a metaphor to help you understand where, there's two types of prisoners. Anyway, this admiral was shot down in World War II. And he got locked into a Japanese concentration camp. If I'm not mistaken, this story is in Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. So if you recognize it, that's probably where you read it. And this admiral, he gets put into this concentration camp. And if you know anything about World War II Japanese concentration camps, it's not a good situation. Not a good situation, and the mortality rate was really high in terms of people who died. And what this admiral said upon his release, he said there were two types of people. He said you had the person who was super optimistic and Pollyannish and didn't pay attention to the reality that we are completely separated, and we are like our people don't know where we are. Like the reality is we may never make it out of here. That's the reality. Like the possibility of escape is slim to none. But they would be Pollyannish. We'll be home by Christmas. They're going to find us. And then Christmas will come. And often they would die of despair. Now, I believe that there's a group of us that fall in that category. And I'm going to explain in a moment what I mean by that. There's a group of us that fall in that. You're like, Linnell, what are you talking about, despair? I believe one of the reasons some of us don't take care of ourselves is because we don't see a reason why. Like, you know what? I thought my saving was going to come in my 30s. I thought at least by the time I turned 40, I would be married. I thought, and so then what happens is we check out. And it's no different than the prisoners of war that thought that by Christmas they would be saved, and they weren't, and they died. They died of despair. The difference was they were able to die because they weren't being fed, they weren't being taken care of. They were able to literally give up the ghost. But some of us, we're in despair. We're spiritually dead, our soul is dead, and our body is slowly dying. But the medical institution, like the big pharma institution, they're like, but just take this, and so you're still alive. You're dead, but you're still alive. You get my point? So you've already died of despair. Oh, I can't believe I'm this age and single. You've already died of so you're not taking care of yourself. Oh, I can't believe I didn't, I can't believe I never got the job. I never made the money. So now you just sit on the couch. You just watch, you kind of space out. You've already died of despair. And then Admiral, I forget his name, but the Admiral said there was another group that stayed aware of the stark reality. And they made a decision that the only way, if there was a slim chance or possibility that they would make it home, is that despite the reality, they had to stay alive. In that group, they saw possibility as it was. It might be slim, but what can I do? If I can get out 10 push-ups a day, maybe that'll keep me strong enough to live. Like if I'll just eat this junk they give me, maybe that will nourish me enough to live. And maybe one day I'll make it back home I see the slight possibility that I can make it back home to my loved ones. And I also look at the possibility that I might die here. Like they stayed aware of the real possibility. And those are the ones that when the Allied forces finally made it into Japan and started island hopping, those were the ones that were still alive. The ones who had the real conversations, the ones who said, you know what, we might not be healthy, but we got to keep pushing. We might not make it out here. They're beating us to the edge of death, but it might happen again tomorrow. But I'm gonna keep pushing because I might make it out of here. And if I died in one of those beatings, I realize that's a possibility too. But they held. Those are the ones that made it back home. What do I mean by this? Is the system fair? No. But are you going to give up? Or are you going to look at the stark reality that the system's not fair? And yeah, I might have to work harder. Yeah, I might take more losses. But if I keep pushing, there's a possibility that I can make it to the other side. And that's what I want to spend time talking about in the next hour. Is one, how do we step out of that place of despair? If you're in that place of despair, like if you just became aware of it, like how do you step out of this place of despair? How do you put down the attitude that it's going to happen anyway? How do you move out of the space of being walking dead? Because that's what I believe. Like when I saw Quest Diagnostics, some of us, it's like, well, I guess that's what's going to happen to me. I guess that's what it is. Like, no, but there's other possibilities. And that's what I want to talk about in the second hour. If you have questions about that, you need clarity, give me a phone call. We'll start the hour with some phone calls, and then we'll get into really how possibility, if you can embrace it, can absolutely change your life, no matter what age you are. Many of us are just existing. Like we've given up on possibility, we've given up on our aspirations and dreams, and we've used really the data points of the past, our losses, our struggles, as the evidence that we will never make it. Like, I won't be able to create, it's just kind of going through the motions day in and day out. And I wanted to hit on this because part of what I want to talk about is I want to introduce concepts of possibility around our health, around our relationships, around our work and money. But before I do that, I wanted to shake us a bit because I'm also very aware that there's many of us who we're not really living. And then there's others of us who we may have deceived ourselves into believing that we're living, especially with how easy it is to self-medicate in this advanced 21st century world. So I want to tackle this idea of possibility, but before I tackle this, I want to talk about the difference between possibility and potential. And the comments are still coming in here on Facebook. By the way, we're streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. You can go to facebook.com/Coach Linnell Harris to watch the live stream and engage in the conversation. Or you can go to youtube.com/Linnell Harris to do the same. I started reading the comments on the break. I actually think, let me do that, because I think some of the context that's coming through here is really good. One of the questions I got is, if I had not gone to Italy, do you think your life would have turned out different? I already answered that question on the break. What I said is absolutely yes. Partly because I believe in the chaos theory and the butterfly effect. which, everything has an impact. Another listener on Facebook said, it's easy for us to kind of self-medicate and live beneath our purpose and possibility, especially with the way social media and streaming works to keep us focused on watching and observing others and keeping up with what's happening outward versus doing the internal work. It's a great comment, Cantice. Thanks for that. So then Joyce came back and asked the second question on Facebook, and she asked, so would you say that getting outside of your environment makes a difference? And I would say 100%. Exposure is everything. Let me tell you something right now. If you're listening to this today, and it shook you a bit already, and I think it's doing what I intended to do as I look at some of the comments here on Facebook. If this shook you a bit, start now. If your normal routine is to sit at home and, maybe order Uber Eats or, go out and grab something up the block and come back and watch a show, don't do that. Like, it's a beautiful day. It's the air and water show. Like, maybe go down to the lake and just do something like shake yourself up. Get outside your normal environment. Sometimes we think grandiose, right? Like, well, if I can't, he went to Italy, or he just said go to Ghana. I can't afford those things, so I guess I'll just be here. And it's like, but you can afford the little bike off the bike rack, and then you can go and get on Lakeshore Drive and take a little ride if you have the ability, right, to just shake up your day. Just shake up your day, because who knows what you may see that will inspire you differently. It's important that way. So, Joyce, yes, absolutely, I would say getting outside your environment makes a difference. Then she said, kind of like you grew up in the projects but never ventured outside of the projects, you'll never know that there's a great big world that's different from your world. And that's true. I mean, I talked about before on the show, young people who live in certain parts of the city who've never seen the lake. That was a comment. Here's one from Attorney Fenton. He said, it's very difficult to comprehend the relevance and impact. This went away. Here we go. Let me open it up. It's very difficult to comprehend the relevance and impact of possibility to a difference or transformation in your life. I think very few people experience a metamorphosis of their life as a result of conscious possibility, and fewer perhaps experience it more than once, i.e., Linnell pre- and post-mentor, pre- and post-corporate America, and pre- and post-marriage. Yeah. And part of what I was going to do today, Attorney Finn, thanks for that comment. And part of what I was going to do is actually go into some of those areas and break down what happened for me, so people can understand, because I'm with you. I think it is difficult to comprehend the relevance and impact of possibility when you just kind of tell, well, this is possible, if you don't have access to possibility. And I want to talk about my own life as an example so people really get, because I think sometimes, like I said earlier, you'd be like, oh, well, that's just Linnell. And it's like, no, Linnell had to overcome some stuff. Like, Linnell had to choose, literally make choices to be different and do different in order to create what you see today. And then what you see today, Linnell is still working to shake up possibility to go to another level. Because at every level of life, there is something that says, now just relax and make it work right here. Even if that level is struggle, just relax and make it work. Just struggle right here. There's another listener who said, this is exactly what my grandmother did for me and my sister. It wasn't another country. It was other states on a college tour. So that kind of thing makes a difference. Like that kind of thing, taking a child out of their environment and say, here's what's possible. Oh, wait. This is what college is like? Oh, wait, this is why we do these things for our children. And what I'm afraid of is that we'll do it for them, but we won't do it for us. And you still need the same type of shaking, no matter how old you are, no matter how mature you are. In order to go to your next level, exposure to something new and different is a great way to shake yourself up, to actually become present to new possibilities. Okay. So, 24, I go to Italy. By the way, Ernest mentioned, pre and post mentor. Pre-mentorship, I was lost. And it was very difficult for me to see possibility. At the time, I was working at a car wash, wiping down cars. And this is how lost I was, and how, for me, it was the possibility of owning a vehicle, owning a car that these cars that I was wiping down didn't seem real. It was because I'm making $1, $2 or tip. I think at the time I might have been making $10 an hour. Whatever minimum wage was, that back about 20 years ago, 23 years ago. Minimum wage, I think, might have hit 12 at the time. I was getting 12, a couple of bucks a car. And I used to try to figure out, okay, if I can wipe down about 6 cars every hour, because I had to rotate with other guys, right? Then that means I get another $12. That means I could make $24 an hour if I stay consistent with that. That's how I thought about it. And it still wasn't enough, because then sometimes, it rained in the middle of the week and then nobody come through, stuff like that. So it was I couldn't get a solid income. And so when it came to this whole possibility, I can't even, how can I even afford a car? One of the cars I'm wiping down, I don't even know how to afford that. And I remember I got into this routine. You get up, you go to work, I'll be there with these guys, and then my possibilities became the things that these guys were doing. Most of them smoked, so I started smoking. And then I started noticing I was getting hooked, so I stopped. Thank God, right? Because it was just I didn't have, there was no possibility. What difference does it make? Okay, you smoking, let's do something new. What became new and different for me were the things that I was exposed to that weren't any better. I get introduced to my mentor, and I learned about the guarantee of purpose. And if I'm honest about it, it was the only thing that made sense to me, that actually made me say it's worth doing something different and working a little harder. That's what influenced me to go back to school. At the time, Microsoft was this new concept, Microsoft Suite, Excel spreadsheets and Word, and people were still trying to figure it out. And I saw a possibility there. And I'm sharing this with you all because, my life has been these little moments of possibility that I grabbed them. And these moments of possibility supplied the next possibility. It was I could go back to junior college. And then I remember talking to the counselor. They were like, well, maybe you should take a Microsoft class and you can get a better job, because I'm wiping down cars. And I could barely afford the tuition at junior college. But the possibility came from purpose, number one, right? Purpose gives me a guarantee. I have to make an effort. And I want you to hear me this morning, that all possibility requires effort. It requires effort. You have, even the good book says it, without works, faith is dead. It requires some level of effort. And so I took this Microsoft course, and it's I'm paying for it. I didn't have a lot of money, right? But it's the new thing. Maybe it can help me in some capacity. and I'm, working and I'm taking, a few classes. And I remember, like, right about that time is when Kinko's was, like, expanding, copies and all that. And I find that I can take this new competence into this. So I got off the cars and I went to Kinko's. And, like, if I keep going through my life, what you're going to hear is how one possibility that I grabbed, I had to do the work, led to another possibility. And what fueled me was this belief that I was guaranteed the realization of my purpose, no matter how far away it felt. Like, if I was created for a reason, then if I pursue that reason, eventually I will get there. Now, I had the benefit of being young. But I want to tell you how, like, this is how quickly it happened, though. Because sometimes when, we get a bit more mature, it's like we start giving up. I was listening to this financial guru, and he was talking about investing, et cetera. And he was like, he was kind of talking about, young people, Generation Z, et cetera. Like, this is the time to put your money away, the magic of compound interest, blah, blah, blah. And then he just stops himself. He says, wait a second. Somebody's listening to me right now who's in their late 40s, and this absolutely applies to you too. Because what happens is we like, oh, well, I'm too old for possibility. Like, I've messed up so much. I've made so many mistakes, and we allow the data from the past to dictate our future. And the beauty that God gave us is the present moment. In this present moment, if you're willing to be present in this moment, the past is the past, and the future is everything in front of the moment we have right now. And in this moment, you can make decisions that begin to impact how your future goes. In every facet of your life, from your health to your relationships to your money and to your overall purpose and spirituality. Now, let me tell you how fast this happened for me. Because that's the other piece, right? Because once I made a decision that I was going to explore the possibilities of my purpose, this is about 23, 24. I told you just the trip going to Italy, et cetera, how that instilled something different in me as well. And then by 25, I still haven't graduated from college. But by 25, just grasping these little possibilities and pushing myself. Like, I used the knowledge I gained from the Microsoft class to learn access databases, got this new job where operationally they didn't have anything figured out for the databases. Oh, I can do that. Volunteer, create a database from this new possibility, from this possibility I took, right? And let me be very clear. I could have gone to work every day and got a check and say, that's their problem. But I understood that if I can create value, for the people around me, then they become possibilities too. I want you to hear this. If you learn how to create value in the relationships around you, and by the way, the relationship might not even be intact right now, but if you create value, there's somebody listening to me right now. You don't know me, but if you know, you're like, I can create value for Linnell. And if you can get to me and create that value, that would create a relationship. Do we understand this? That in itself would create a relationship that would introduce possibility. And there are people who have done that. So instead of saying that problem is not my problem, I saw the possibility that if I create value, maybe these older white men might see possibility in me. Was it a risk? Oh, yeah. Did it work every time? Absolutely not. But did it work once? Yep. And that gave me another possibility. By the time I was 25, by just taking this on for 2 years, looking for possibilities, I became a supervisor. Not a big deal. I wasn't making that much money. I just got a leadership role, right? But what did that provide? Another possibility. This is how possibility works. And I believe the Creator made it this way on purpose. That when I'm given a possibility and I take hold of it and I squeeze it and I make the most of it, it presents another possibility. And it is, I believe, the ladder that we have to learn to climb. All this takes the ability to look beyond the losses. So let me tell you about some of the losses before I became a supervisor. Because I really want to make this like as simple as possible, as plain as possible. Became a supervisor right before my birthday at the age of 25. But before that, I remember being in an interview to become a team lead on a call center floor. And I was excited about this. It didn't require a bachelor's degree because I didn't have it. I didn't have that possibility. You know, I didn't have that to leverage as a possibility. And it would increase my pay. And I remember sitting down. It was an older white woman, and she had the same name as my mom, Mildred. But she didn't look at me with loving eyes like my mother did. And I remember sitting across from her in this interview, realizing 5 minutes into the interview that there was no possibility. Like, has that ever happened to you? Like, where you were excited about a new possibility. This could change the course. And then you're met with the same systemic blocks that have shut you down before. Man, when I tell you, I could tell 5 minutes into this interview, and I was trying. Like 15-minute mark, I'm still pushing. 20-minute mark. I think by the 30-minute mark, her stoicism and how she was looking at me like, you can't say nothing that's going to make me give you this job, boy. Right? Like, by then, it kind of got to me, and we shut the interview down in about 45 minutes. I kind of figured it was best for me to save my energy anyway. Like, I'm not getting this job. I'm not, ain't no way I'm working for her. She ain't having it. And then, of course, someone else who didn't look like me got hired. Those kind of things happened. It's what we do with it that matters. Do I make it about me? Or do I pursue other possibilities? I'm grateful to God that woman didn't hire me because there was a path that I was supposed to take. And some of us, we take perceived losses. And I say perceived losses that where the Creator has his hand on it saying, no, you're not supposed to go that way. But I need more money right now. I need a raise right now. This position would do this, but no, I got so much more for you than that. So no to that, but then I need you to take the next possibility. But what happens is we'll be like, see, I told you, it never works. Every time I try to put a foot forward, I get pushed back. I'm done. And then we stop pursuing possibility. And so we miss the guarantee of purpose. We miss what truly is our position. Because our position is not supposed to be in poverty. Our position is not supposed to be struggling and poor. I do not believe that's what the Creator wants for us. That is not the guarantee of purpose. Even Mother Teresa knew where her meals were coming from. As much as she gave, she knew she wasn't struggling. She was living out her purpose, but she wasn't struggling. I hope you all get this. I hope you follow. The losses you take are the losses that are supposed to happen because you weren't supposed to go that direction. I can think about so many things that I thought were good for me, where the creator knew if that woman had reached out even after that horrible interview and said, we're going to give you the job, I'd be like, okay. The creator knew that. He knew she needed to have that racist attitude. He knew that in order for me to get where I needed to run into a woman like that because I otherwise would have been detoured. Then my division manager, remember going to him, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that. Nope. The operations manager who he worked for left and went to corporate. And I felt stuck. The operations manager, older white gentleman, his name was Matt Watasic, phenomenal guy. He went to the corporate office, and I was working at a branch, and I felt like all my allies were gone. And it would have been very easy for me to get into this. Get up, go to work, come home, endure whatever persecutions. And there was another opportunity where they were trying to, figure out another technology. I'm like, oh, I can build that. And I remember his name was Joe. I'm not going to say his last name. Joe wasn't that big a fan of me, older white guy. And he was like, Linnell, you think you can do this? You better not mess it up. That's basically what he said, right? If you think you can do this, you can do it, but you better not mess it up. So I was taking a risk. I'm like, Joe, I can do it. Again, here's a possibility. I know Joe don't like me. I know Joe ain't can promote me because Joe's already told me, like, you can't communicate. You'll never be a leader, blah, blah, blah. Woo, woo, woo. Okay. So I take this opportunity. When I do it, Matt hears about it at the home office and says, wow, that's what I need for every site that we have on the globe. Gives me a call, says, what would you think about working at the home office? The risk I took with Joe, right? And by the way, it took effort. It took staying late. It took working longer hours. But the risk I made with Joe got me in a supervisory position over all of North America by the age of 26 with no bachelor's degree, simply because I was chasing possibility. That is when I go back and explore my life, like, that's the difference. That's why I'm on the radio right now, because when I got smacked down, I just took the next possibility that came. There's something interesting happening in the world right now where there is a negative, like an energetic negative undercurrent. And I see it happening with the millennials. I see it happening with Gen Z, where there's a measuring of what I have against what you have and how I'll never get this, and I'm being disadvantaged. And by the way, this is not just happening for black children. This is happening across the board, every ethnicity with Gen Y, Gen Z. And the idea that we should embrace the possibility in front of us seems gone. There's an entitlement. There seems to be an entitlement that I deserve, I should receive. Now, what's interesting about this is that this is the same entitlement that I've seen in our community. And it occurs to me as an uninformed entitlement. Let me give you some examples, and y'all don't beat me up, okay? But there's so much credence placed on who the president is. So let me ask you a question. And by the way, I'm not telling you not to go vote. But what I want you to really see is how we put the guidance for our life and what happens next to us. There's an entitlement that they should do something for us. And then we continue to stay disappointed when they don't. Like somebody else should be doing something for me. And what I notice in our community, it always comes down to what the leaders aren't doing versus what I could be doing. And I can go back as far as I can remember in terms of presidents and just ask us, and so what did you get? So what did you get? Bill Clinton, right? Y'all better vote for him. He's the first black president. What did you get? What did you get for that? A 1994 crime bill that locked up more black men? What did you get? That, by the way, was authored by Senator Biden, who we put in office again. What did you get? After Bill, there was George. Oh, my God, George. Oh, so awful. What did you get? We got the Patriot Act. That's everybody. You lost liberties. What did you get? After those years, it was so bad, we got our savior, President Barack Hussein Obama. What did you get? 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 And then it's the same expectation of entitlement, the same disappointment. At what point do we learn? Donald Trump comes into office, President Trump. Most of us spent the 4 years suffering off of every word that the man said. What did you get? Interestingly enough, it seems like we got more from the one person we didn't like. And I said, don't get mad at me, but still there's an entitlement. In the last 4 years under Biden, what did you get? So now, Kamala's your savior? If you don't step into a new level of self-efficacy, this is not a political conversation. This is a you conversation. This is a you conversation. If you don't step into a new level of self-efficacy where you embrace personal possibility, nothing's going to change, because no matter who gets into office, you ain't getting nothing. So you could put all your energy behind that, or you could put your energy behind you. What about that? What about the next possibility? What about the next opportunity? What about that? Are you putting your arms around that? Are you squeezing that the same way you're squeezing the possibility of the next, dare I say it, black, female president? We're not even clear about that. And people get mad about that. You think that she's their sister. Our emotions are locked up in the wrong things, folks. Your emotions should be locked up in your possibilities. And I'm not saying to be politically irresponsible. Absolutely not. What I'm saying is that is not going to make a difference for me, because I'm going to embrace possibilities. Every possibility that comes across. Kamala get in, I'm still going to be embracing possibility. President Trump get in, I'm still going to be embracing possibility. What you got? Hey, man, we better wake up. They got us sleeping. And what scares me the most is how people can get activated around someone else and not activated around themselves. You can get activated around someone else who doesn't know you, doesn't know your name, doesn't care about you. By the way, if you happen to be in the vicinity for a handshake, they probably wouldn't even shake your hand. got to wake up. But that's what's consuming you. That's what's got your energy. There are folks who are activated around the DNC being in Chicago, like, ooh, I got to be there. I got to be like, but isn't there something, maybe there's something else you should be doing with your energy. Maybe there's something else you should be doing with your time. How is that going to change your life? Man. It requires self-efficacy. Now let's break this down, because self-efficacy is comprised of confidence. And I think what happens is that we start to use the data points of the past, and the data points of the past begin to impact our confidence. And so what happens is we stop taking shots. We stop taking shots. But you want to know what I know about every big shot in my circle? The folks you can call big shots. The folks who, so-called got the guap, got the money. The thing that's different about the big shots and the folks who not big shots, the only thing that I see as difference, the difference is the big shot is just someone who took more small shots and they didn't give up. They just kept shooting and 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 shooting. And eventually those shots started to add up. And some of us will take a shot. We're like, oh, I can't believe I missed. And it takes a year to take another shot. And then I can't believe I missed. And it takes another 2 years to make another shot. And God forbid I try something new and I can't get it. I don't understand it. It feels like it's moving too fast. Oh, I just got to quit. What if failure wasn't an option for you? What if you didn't allow it to be an option? What if you began to fully squeeze the opportunity that came to you in the form of possibility? Possibility. The Slayer Goals membership, this is not a sales pitch, but it's something I noticed. Right? $37 a month. It's a possibility. So many people won't even squeeze that. It's a possibility. It's like, oh, well, that won't work for me. Oh, the meeting times won't work for me. Like, oh, I have to watch the recordings. Oh. And it's like, what about the possibility? There are possibility in books. There are possibility in videos. Like there's possibilities everywhere. Are you willing to squeeze the possibilities? When I was talking about the gentleman who called me up, I'm going to end it with this. He called me up and I asked him if he had dreams. And he said, man, I stopped dreaming a long time ago. I've taken too many losses. My dreams hurt. He literally said, my dreams hurt. My dreams hurt me. For some of us, we had a dream of marriage. We got married, and then the divorce came. It hurt. Now the possibility of marriage is off the table. Why? Why? For some of us, we got the dream job, and everything was going good, and then maybe something unfortunate happened. Maybe we were accused of something. Maybe we just didn't get the opportunity we thought. And we lost the dream job and it hurt. So you just give up? You done now? Well, you don't understand, Linnell. That hurt me deeply. Dreams hurt. Let me tell you, dreams do hurt. The dreams that aren't aligned with the guarantee of your purpose. Like that had to come to an end because it's not aligned with the guarantee of your purpose. And sometimes I think we just got to wrap around our minds that we've been aiming in the wrong areas. And if I aim in alignment with my purpose, that's when it will come together, because nothing else is supposed to come together because you're not here for that. Linnell, my dreams hurt, man. You don't understand. My dreams hurt. So I asked him, I said, so are you going to live a life where you run from your possibilities? Or is this going to be the moment where you man up And he said, regardless of what I run into that might hurt me again, I'm committed to creating a life that's worthy of my potential, that's based on the possibilities the Creator's given me aligned with my purpose. I was like, because if it's all about just how your dreams hurt you, I can't help you. But if you're willing to make a commitment right now, to begin embracing new possibilities, I can help you. Linnell, what does that look like? And the first thing I said is, well, we got to get clear on where you are right now. What are you up to? And he started breaking it down. Well, I'm a God-fearing man. I feel like I'm driven. I'm determined. I'm an anchor for my family. I could be a better father, though. And he just started, where are you right now? And I want you to look at, for each of you listening right now, like, where are you right now? Like, what are you up to? When I say what are you up to, like, what is the present real, like Admiral, I wish I could remember his name, like the Admiral said, who was locked away as a prisoner of war. Like, what is the stark reality? What is your right now? Because the other thing I believe is many of us, we're not really present to our real reality. You're not present to the fact that you only got a few dollars in your bank account right now. Like, because you entertain yourself so well. You stay in conversations that are meaningless so well that you don't look at the stark reality that, hey, do I really want to live? Do I really want to live with just a couple of $100 in my bank account for the rest of my life? Is that how you really want to live? And when we get sometimes the stark realities, addressing the real life reality is enough to wake us up. It ain't sweet. I need to do something. I owe it to myself to do something different. By the time we got through that part of the conversation, I could sense a difference in his voice. Like he's like, yeah, man, I could be doing better financially. I've hit this crossword road at work. I'm looking at his notes right now. I've been living paycheck to paycheck. So then I asked him, what are you committed to? Like, what are you really, truly committed to? Like, what are you committed to that you would die for? Because I know when you talk to a man, you can't just be like, you know what you committed to? Now, what would you die for? Because if your dreams hurt and you're done dreaming, then let's get to like what you would die for. I would die for my children, Linnell. I knew that was going to come. I knew it. Most men would. I would die for my family. I'd do whatever I could to help them. Excuse me, sir. Do you realize that helping you is helping them? Can you add yourself to the mix? Are you willing to be committed to yourself? Are you willing to be committed to your health? Are you willing to recommit to your marriage? Are you willing to recommit to yourself financially? Are you willing to recommit to the work you go in and do every day that has an impact on those babies? Are you willing to recommit spiritually so you could be a better man, a better father, a better husband? Yeah, bro. Now we're getting somewhere. Yeah, man. And if you do that, what's possible? We hit a wall. Man, you trying to get me to dream again. I said, but you said you're committed to your children, and a commitment to your children requires that you go through the pain of dreaming. You said you would take a bullet for them. You said you would die for them. You telling me you can't be hurt a little bit? Deep breath. The dreams start coming. See, sometimes we just got to dig, get present to what we care about. We live in a world that consumes it with so much entertainment, so many things that don't matter that we forget about what we really care about. He started sharing his dreams. He starts crying. Two grown men. He crying. I'm crying because I see he got a breakthrough. He got a breakthrough. We both on the phone crying. When he gets done telling me his dreams, I repeat it back to him. He's sobbing now. He said, man, I know I should have called you. I know I shouldn't have called you, man. You got me in my feelings. I said, it's your feelings that's going to get you to the next level. See, the problem is we don't get emotional about the right things. I said it before. You're emotional about the election, but you're not emotional about your own life. You can, a visceral impact. If I told you right now I was voting for Donald Trump, some of y'all would get angry. So you have visceral emotion for something else, but you don't have visceral emotion for your life, for your own life. Now we got his emotions flowing. He's dreaming. Then I asked him, what's in the way of you producing your dreams? What's in the way of you producing your dreams? Well, I don't have enough money. I don't have the aptitude, man. I tend to be timid. I could use more confidence. I got a fear of speaking. Sometimes the level of trust I have for myself is low, and I succumb to criticism. And then I'm a perfectionist. I want it to be perfect every time. And I'm a family man. I'm a husband. I'm a father. It's like I don't have enough time to create some of the things that I dream about. So I asked him this big question. I said, if we moved all that out the way, the finances, the timidity, the lack of confidence, the lack of self-trust, the fear of criticism, the need to be perfect, which is impossible, this story you have about time, we moved all that out the way, what would be possible? Because, by the way, those are stories. Those are the stories that have been, in many ways, reinforced by the past losses. If we move the stories out the way, if we clear the plate, like, what's really possible? He said, man, it would give me the opportunity to create a solid foundation. It would give me an amazing blueprint that I could begin to hone my personal power. If we move that stuff out the way, I believe I could be the type of man that would impact the lives of thousands of people. If we move that out the way, I believe that one day I could actually reach my goal of being on television. If we move all that out the way, I believe it would create a spiritual shift in how I show up as a man. It would create a spiritual shift in how I show up for my woman. All of a sudden, a man that didn't dream started dreaming again, simply because he was willing to place his emotions with him and not everything else. This morning, where are your emotions misplaced? If the USA had lost the basketball gold, a lot of people would have been sad. But what that got to do with you? Our emotions are misplaced. They got us mixed up. It's time to get rewired. A lot of us got, we're short circuiting. There's a fuse is blown. What about you? What about your life? Are you willing to experience the sadness right there? Are you willing to experience the exhilaration of the win right there? You look at social media about that win, boy, people making time to create memes, all kinds of things. Why? Because the emotion is moving them. But what about your dreams? What about what you want to create? Is that emotion moving you? Are you willing to use that to embrace new possibilities? The one thing that will always exist as long as you breathe is possibility. As long as you breathe, there's possibility. As long as you have consciousness, there's possibility. And the question is, are you embracing it, or are you letting it blow away? And if you let it blow away, that's how your life will be. Dust in the wind. No impact. But I guarantee you, if you begin to embrace the possibility of your purpose, of your life, it won't take long. By 2026, things could be radically different for you. Look who I used to be. But you got to do the work. It takes effort. It's going to take some tears. You willing to cry for your own life? Because like I said, you'll cry for something. People going to be crying election night on one side or the other. Right? Like we got emotion for all kinds of things that don't really matter. Because like I said, what did you get out of it? Thank you for watching Inspirational Perspective. If you love this show and you want to see more content like this, you can go right here. And if you like this subject and you want to see much more content that we have available for you, just click the button here. As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to watch the show live, 7 a.m. every Sunday morning on WVON Radio, or you can catch it right here on YouTube or Facebook.com/Coach Liddell Harris. Be sure to hit that like button. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so we can get more content just like this to you.